So this video is going to be an analysis of my draft in the Gameshow Network Draft League, National Dex Gen. Pokémon Draft League. And I am not good at this game or draft especially, so it's probably going to be really bad. I think that I'm going to try and upload videos of the gameplay, but I might not be able to do that. And I suck at making videos, so the quality is not going to be good at all. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. But what is the GNDL? As I said earlier, it's a National Dex Gen. Draft League. But what's a Pokemon Draft League? I assume that most people watching this will know what it is. But if they don't, it's basically just a competitive Pokemon format where there's a board of Pokemon which you can draft, each costing a different amount of points, and each person is given a certain amount of points to draft their Pokemon, as well as an order in the draft, which will usually be a snake draft, meaning the first person picks first and so on until they get to the last person, and then it goes backwards in order to make it more fair for people later in their line. Anyway, back about the GNDL specifically, it has 4 skill-based divisions. Well, actually, this season, Season 6, it only has 3. And I'm in the lowest skill one because I'm bad. And yeah, this season also they've changed the Terra system from a low tier Terra captain to each Pokemon having a Terra cost, which is different, which lets you use them as terrestrialization options, and they can terrestrialize into any type, but the Terra types are shown at the start of the battle. As I mentioned, I'm in the lowest skill division, the Hoenn Flight. If you, at the end of each season, if you place top 2 in your division, you move up a division. So if I place top 2 in this one, I move up to Johto. But if you place bottom 2, you move down 1, unless you're in the bottom 1, because there's nowhere down to go. So in Draft League, I've been in 2 before this. The first one I was in was the LGA Season 4, a Gen 9 Paldea format, where I came 14th out of 16, 1 win, 8 losses. I don't know how 2 people placed under me. The other was actually Season 5 of the GNDL, the one that this video is about, Season 6. In that one, I did slightly better. I still came 10th out of 12, which is still third last. But I went 3 wins, 5 losses, which is much better than 1 win, 8 losses. And I also had the overall kill leader of the entire season in Melmetal, and none of my other mons had a positive KD ratio. The entire point of this part is basically just to prepare anyone who's gonna watch the actual battles of this season for me to probably lose pretty much every match. As for draft order this season, I'm in 9th. My tag for Pokemon is I am stupid, it's true. I guess they were being nice to me by putting my name as I'm not stupid, it's true in the randomizer. But yeah, 9th is not good in a snake draft because you want to be very, very close to the end or the start. And 9th is just a little far from the end, and in general, being later is worse than being earlier. So now that we're up to the actual drafting part, I can talk about what I picked, which is going to be the point of this video. So that's cool. Basically, what I wanted to do in this draft was use Sneasler and Tapu Lele because every time I play against Sneasler, I pretty much just lose. So I want to not have to play against it, and hopefully be the menace to society that Sneasler Lele lets you be, and hopefully win. So my first pick did in fact end up being Sneasler, and Sneasler brings quite a lot to the table other than just being a menace. The main reason that Sneasler is good is because it has really high attack and it's fast. It has access to Sword Stance, Poison and Fighting, a very good offensive type combo, although it can't really do much to Ghost and Poison types, but it has coverage options for that, like Throat Chop, and I think it gets in Headbutt, it might not though. It's really fast, it can U-turn really fast, it does Fake Out, Poison Touch, plus also Dire Claw is really, really just a busted move. Unburden and Poison Touch are really good abilities. This thing, if anyone who uses this thing probably doesn't need to do taxes because it can just kill the IRS. I don't even live in America. We don't have the IRS. Anyway, but it's the downsides are it's quite frail and it's really weak to Psychic. But other than that, it's pretty much it. This thing is stupid. Sneasler is not quite as stupid, however, as the synergy it has with our second pick, Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele is just it hits really, really hard on the special side and can delete pretty much every single physical wall that wants to stop Sneasler. It setting up Psychic Terrain also gives me a way to activate Sneasler's Unburden without having to rely on my opponent to activate a Berry or a Weakness policy or pop an Air Balloon. It also has access to Carmine, so it can really just delete stuff if it wants to, and dual screens, which can let Sneasler and other Pokemon later set up more easily, and also itself. And being Fairy type is very good. Unfortunately, its defense is pretty low, and its move pool is kind of small. It pretty much only gets Psychic moves, Moonblast, Focus Blast, Shadow Ball, Carmine, and dual screens. But that's really all it needs. This thing's broken. For my third pick, I wanted to get a defensive Pokemon before I ran out of points and all my defensive mons would be really just not good enough to do their job. So I went with Slowking. Slowking is a good option for a few reasons. Firstly, it's obviously just a good defensive mon on its own. Regenerator, Bulky Water, Slack Off, Scold, really great move pool, a ton of great supporting moves, a bunch of setup moves which it has for no reason. Like, why can it learn Belly Drum? That makes no sense. But it is very good, and especially on this team, because it allows me to get my frail things like Tapu Lele or Sneasler in safely with a slow chilly reception or teleport while tanking a hit and then Regenerator healing off a lot of the damage. Unfortunately, in my third pick is I already have two Psychics, which is not good. Neither is being weak to Knockoff and U-Turn, even though Sneasler does resist those, and Sneasler is a really good knockoff sponge because of Unburden and its resistance, it's still not great to have, and obviously Slowking's slow, which it can fix with Trick Room, but my other two picks so far don't want to be in Trick Room because Sneasler and Lele are both very fast. Continuing with the idea of picking my defensive core next, my fourth pick ended up being Skarmory. Skarmory is a very good physically defensive Pokemon. It has really, really high defense. Even super effective physical hits often can't really break through it too well, so it pairs really nicely with Slowking's great special defense, as they can usually switch between each other. In addition to this, Skarmory has access to Stealth Rock and Spikes, and this combined with its bulk and access to Roost, Taunt, stuff like that, makes it one of the best hazard setters it always has been since Generation 2. It's recently gained access to Iron Defense and Body Press to have a form of offense, and it's always had Sword Stance and Weak Armor, but that's not really that good, but it's funny, so yeah, I'm probably never going to use it. But Sturdy in general is a good ability, letting it deal with things getting out of control, like setup sweepers. Unfortunately, its special defense is really lacking, so if I don't bring Slowking, then the special bulk on my team can be pretty bad. And it shares an electric weakness with Slowking, which isn't great for the defensive core, as well as not having much variety in what it can do. But overall, Skarmory is a very good Pokemon, and I'm glad to have it on the team. Now that I've gotten my main defensive core out of the way, I wanted to pick up a mon which I felt was very important because I think it's one of the best Pokemon under Psychic Terrain, and that's Blacephalon. Blacephalon is pretty fast and really, really strong. It hits like an absolute truck, despite its move pool being really small. Beast Boost and Carmine let it hit even harder. It's really dumb with the Choice Scarf. The main way to stop it is Sucker Punch or Aqua Jet, and Psychic Terrain blocks those. It also has access to Expanding Force, which gives it essentially just a 156 base power move in Psychic Terrain, which is stronger than its stabs, even though it isn't stab. And so it hits very hard, and its main weakness is mitigated by terrain. So it's just really stupid, and I'm probably going to use it terribly because I suck. But it should be good, hopefully. Initially, for my 6th pick, I wanted Florges, as it's a nice special ward that I could use instead of Slowking, and can be a nice defensive fairy when compared to Lele being an offensive fairy. But it got picked between me picking Blacephalon and my 6th pick, so instead I ended up going with Terra Flygon, which really doesn't do the same thing. But anyway, Flygon is just an overall a decent jack of all trades. 80 in every stat, and then 100 in attack and speed is not great, but it's also not terrible. Being a ground type is really nice to help switch into electric types. Of course, this is before terrestrialization, unless I'm Terra Ground. And it also deters Volt Switch, which is very nice. Terra really is what makes Flygon, in my opinion, a pretty good pick. It can really help out its Dragon Dance sets get extra power to help pull off better sweeps and endgame cleans. It can also make its special attacking sets actually do real damage outside of its stabs, because it has some really good coverage options. Levitate in general is just very good for Terra. You can get an electric type with no weaknesses. Steel is a really, really good defensive typing when it's immune to ground. Flygon support options are alright with things like the Fog, Stealth Rock, Tailwind. It can keep itself alive along with Roost on more bulky sets. But since it has Levitate, it means that it won't be protected from priority moves by Tapu Lele's Psychic Terrain, although most opponents probably won't bring much priority because of Lele, and Flygon stats are very middle of the road, so it's not super good at anything, but it's also not terrible at anything. So I think that it can be a pretty underrated pick with Terra. For the 7th pick, I really wanted to have a Pokemon with Rapid Spin, so that I could remove hazards without removing my own terrain, and the hazards that Skarmory will be setting up, probably. So, for some stupid reason, I decided to go with Starmie. Starmie's pretty fast. Its offensive move pool is pretty good. Actually, it's very wide, but a lot of the types are surprisingly bad offensively, but it's still pretty wide. It has Cosmic Power and Recover, so it can do some defensive stuff along with Flip Turn and Teleport to try and be a bulky pivot. Base 100 special attack isn't terrible, but this thing is the same type as Slowking, and apart from being a lot faster than Slowking, Slowking is just way better for the team. And this is basically just fast, more offensive Slowking. And if I bring both this and Slowking, then I'll have 2 Pokemon with the same typing, and my team will be really weak to everything that they're weak to. And so it's just overall not really a good pick. I'm recording this really late, so I've already done my trades for week 3, and Starmie is gone in them, but I don't think I should have taken Starmie. But it's here now, so yay, I guess. Participation award for the Starfish. For my 8th pick, I'm back on track for what I planned to do before the draft started, which is picking Arctozolt to go with Slowking. Arctozolt has Slush Rush, and with Slush Rush, it makes it so that a lot of the time, Bolt Beat doubles in power, because that's what it does when you're faster, giving it a stab 170 base power electric move off of its base 100 attack, which is basically all it does. It gets in during snow from chilly reception, gets the defense boost, the doubled speed from Slush Rush, and starts clicking buttons, which are mostly Bolt Beacon Blizzard. Despite this, it does have a wider move pool than most people think, with access to things like Rock Slide, Stomping Tantrum, Low Kick, Freeze Dry, Meteor Beam, Hydro Pump, things like that. It also gives me an Ice type and an Electric type, which I didn't have any before, and are both pretty good offensively. And now that I have both Sneasler and Slowking and Arctozolt, I have two very strong offensive cores which I can bring, which people will have to prep for, which I could also just not bring. And, well, three of the four ones function fine without the other ones. Arctozolt without Slowking is not very good. Like, without Snow, it doesn't function well. Boltbeak becomes pretty weak again, and it also doesn't have much variety in what it does. Like, it doesn't really matter what the set is, it'll almost always have Boltbeak because it's just basically just Boltbeak the Pokemon in Snow. Since I was still a bit annoyed about losing Florges, I decided to replace it with a much worse version in my 9th pick with Slurpuff. Slurpuff can, in theory, be an okay support option with Light Screen, Aromatherapy, Heal Bell, Wish, and most importantly, Sticky Web. Sticky Web pairs very well with Psychic Terrain since Sticky Web reducing the speed and terrain blocking priority restricts all forms of speed control outside of like Paralysis and Trick Room. Slurpuff also has Unburden, which it can activate in terrain with a Psychic Seed, although it's not good, so it doesn't really matter. The only thing this will help is like getting faster Yawns or something, or maybe a fast Endeavor with some random special hit being lit because of the seed. Unfortunately, Slurpuff has very bad stats, and its move pool is also not very good. Its offensive presence is non-existent unless it can get up a belly drum, which it can't most of the time, and its main role is to set up Sticky Web and support the team with Wish. But all of my hazard removal is Defog, apart from Starmie, which we've already established is not very good to bring, and my team can't receive Wish's Roll because most of it is so frail, and most of the ones which aren't super frail can just heal themselves anyway. Like Slowking has Slack Off, Starmie has Recover, Flygon has Roost, Skarmory has Roost. So it's not really that useful, but it might do something. You never know. Now, finally, for the 10th and final pick of the draft, I went with Terra Drifblim, which is kind of funny since it was one of the first three Pokemon that I thought I wanted to draft on this team. There are a few reasons why I wanted Drifblim. Mainly, Unburden plus Psychic Terrain gives me a reliable way to double my speed, then helps me set up with Calm Mind, and then potentially get some sweeps going. And Terra can help do this by giving it like a different typing to set up on different mons, or just mainly coverage with Terra Blast. In theory, this is a good idea, except Drifblim's stats are like really bad. Drifblim can also do some annoying defensive stuff with things like Defog, Strength Sap, Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp, Thunderwave, Memento, Destiny Bond, Knockoff, Tailwind, Hex, things like that. Can also explode, so that's pretty funny. I might end up bringing it to a lot of matchups where it should not be brought because I think that Drifblim is just a pretty funny mon and want it to do well, but it probably won't because it's not very good. But I like it, so it's here. Unfortunately, this does mean that now I have a grand total of 5 Pokemon weak to Ghost, but I'll deal with the consequences later, I guess. So now we've come to the end of my GNDL draft analysis. I think this is probably the best team I've drafted before, because the other ones are all really bad and this one's only moderately bad. It's really hyper offensive. I still somehow have alright defensive options in Slowking and Skarmory though, so that's very nice. I have a lot of ways to just end games really fast, which is nice, but walling can be a bit of an issue. Also, I definitely need a Ghost Resist, and Starmie and Slurpuff were probably not good to draft. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.